5 effective steps to practice listening to English that you should apply. 1. Repetition listening. How to do it. Choose a short audio clip, 1 to 3 minutes. Listen multiple times. Gives focus on a different skill each time. First time, listen for the main idea. Second time, listen and take vocabulary notes. Third time, listen and repeat along. Shadowing. 2. Listen with subtitles, then without. Step 1. Listen with English subtitles to understand the content and learn new words. Step 2. Listen again without subtitles to train pure listening skills. Step 3. Listen and transcribe dictation if you want to improve further. 3. Shadowing. How to do it. Listen and repeat immediately. Imitating the speaker's intonation, pronunciation, and speed. Use short clips with a moderate speed for best results. 4. Listen by familiar topics. Choose topics you are interested in. Travel, weather, movies, technology. When you are familiar with the context, it becomes easier to guess the meaning and understand the content. 5. Practice listening through the YouTube channel Easy English with Daisy. This channel features short conversations and stories that help learners practice listening in a simple and effective way. A social media fast. Nowadays, many people are social media fanatics. They are always looking at their mobile phones or tablets and updating their Twitter or Facebook accounts. They are taking pictures of what they eat or taking pictures of themselves, which is called selfies. When people are not oversharing, they are constantly reading or looking at what friends and family members are posting. Social media is becoming addicting. Research shows that most people spend on average almost 4 hours a day on social networking sites. That's almost 30 hours a week. While some people need and use social media for work or to stay in touch with friends, other people find that using social media so much causes anxiety and stress. People also tend to use social media as a way to procrastinate. So, just as many religions ask people to abstain or not to have certain foods or drinks for a certain time, many people are taking social media fasts. They are not updating their statuses, and they are also not reading what other people are posting. They choose to stay away from social media for 30 days, ironically. The details of these fasts can be found on social networking sites all over the internet. The reasons people undertake a fast are varied. Some people want to reconnect with their families or friends by disconnecting from their cell phones. Some people want to be more productive at work. What did some fasters do instead of logging on? Some decided to connect with friends by actually sitting down and having face-to-face conversations. If friends or loved ones were far away, they would call them on the telephone instead. Some even wrote handwritten postcards or letters. The results were mixed. Some people felt that not using social media made them more anxious. Others developed more positive habits like journaling or meditating. The parade. The hockey team Los Angeles Kings won the 2014 Stanley Cup and had a parade last Monday in Los Angeles to celebrate the victory. During the parade, fans from all over California came out to support and celebrate with their favorite hockey team. According to the Los Angeles Police Department, over 100 uniformed officers were sent to the parade to make sure everything went okay. Although the parade went by without a problem, the LAPD's public information officer said that there was an increase in alcohol-related arrests than when the Kings won the Stanley Cup in 2012. According to Christopher Harris, who attended the parade with his family, a lot of people who attended the parade had gone to the bars surrounding the Staples Center and had gotten drunk. Before attending the parade, I saw one person throw up on the street in front of a policeman. They put him in the back of the police car, Harris said. The cheers from the crowd started getting louder and louder as the players from the Kings started passing by. Robert Lopez, who attended the parade even though he was rooting for the New York Rangers, said that the Kings fans started getting really annoying. He was pretty sure it was because of the alcohol. Everyone seemed pretty drunk. Lopez said that he was glad that he didn't bring his New York Rangers jersey, as he originally planned on, because he said people would have definitely thrown stuff at him. A public relations worker For Los Angeles Kings issued a statement for the hockey organization saying that they do not condone people to drink before going to attend the parade. He went on to say that they took the precaution of having the parade start earlier than it did in 2012 so that people didn't have a chance to go get a drink. It seems as if it still failed. The Queen Mary Susan grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska, the heartland of the USA. She remembers playing in the cornfields as a child and seeing miles and miles of land stretching out as far as she could see. One day, her aunt took her to see the 1997 movie Titanic starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. She marveled at the sight of the vast ocean. It was something she had never seen before. She remembers turning to her aunt to say, "I'm going on a ship like that one day, Auntie." True to her words, Susan left Nebraska and moved to Los Angeles, California. She wanted to live near the ocean and was delighted to discover the Queen Mary was permanently docked in Long Beach. The grand ship, which has the same size of the Titanic, is now a museum and tourist attraction. She didn't hesitate to book a tour of the ship. "This is wonderful," she thought to herself. Upon arriving on board, Susan was not disappointed. It was everything she hoped it would be. The ship was restored to its original state, which was very luxurious. The tour she took highlighted the ship's history and importance over the years. She ate at one of the 3 restaurants and stayed the night in the ship's hotel. The Queen Mary was built in the 1930s in Great Britain and enjoyed many years sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. It was host to many dignitaries such as Winston Churchill, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, and many Hollywood celebrities. During World War II, the ship was assigned as a troop transport where it was used to transport up to 18,000 Allied soldiers per trip. After the war, it was restored to its original state and began its transatlantic travels. In 1967, the city of Long Beach purchased the aging ocean liner, and it has been a popular attraction for the city ever since. "It is living history," said Susan after her visit. "A garage band, many young American boys and girls dream of becoming a rock star at one time or another in their lives. American culture is largely defined by the music young people enjoy. During the 1960s, music in the United States was greatly influenced by the social issues of the day. Many call the decade a revolutionary period in the country's history, and music was a big part of that revolution. When David was young, he was in love with the Beatles. The English band was possibly the most impactful group of the generation. It revolutionized music like no band or artist before them. Most young boys wanted to be Paul McCartney or John Lennon, the 2 founders of the band. Becoming rich and famous in America is one of the attractions of living in the U.S., and becoming a rock star is one way of achieving this. David knew this, so he got together with 3 of his friends and convinced them to form a band together. Many American rock and roll bands began their journey in someone's garage. One notable group to start this way was Van Halen. David and his friends were convinced they could become the next Beatles with a little luck and a lot of practice. The band practiced regularly over the years and soon became good enough to perform before some young audience. But they never hit the big time, unfortunately. The road to success in the music industry is not an easy one to travel, but that does not deter some American dreamers. David's philosophy was you never know what the future holds, and is engaged in the music industry to this day. A couple of his original band members are also in the industry enjoying marginal success and are still pursuing their dream. Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Laura was confused. She came to the United States a year ago. She didn't understand the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day. She knew that both holidays had to do with remembering and honoring people who had fought in wars for the United States. She also knew that both days were national holidays. On both days, banks, schools, and the post offices were closed on both holidays. Stores offered special sales on both holidays. People hung the American flag, and sometimes there were even fireworks. Laura had seen on television that on both days the President of the United States made a speech and visited a cemetery laying a wreath on the grave of a soldier. Laura decided to ask the mailman Brian what the difference was. She figured he would know since he had both days off from work. The next day when Brian was dropping off Laura's mail, she asked him. Brian explained that Memorial Day is usually observed on the last Monday of May. This meant that it could be on a different date every year. Memorial Day is a day for remembering and honoring those in the military who died, especially if they died in a battle. Brian also told Laura that Memorial Day was also considered the unofficial start of summer. Many public beaches would open on Memorial Day. Veterans Day is a day set aside to thank and honor all people who served in the United States military. Brian explained that Veterans Day is also to remember those that are still alive. Brian told Laura that the date for Veterans Day never changes. It is always held on November 11th, which was the date when World War I ended in 1918. The Challenger disaster, Chris knew exactly where she was on January 28, 1986. As a matter of fact, nearly all Americans can recall what they were doing at the moment the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded. It is one of the most tragic moments in the history of the country, and it is one that will not be forgotten. Chris was working as a clerk at a clothing manufacturing plant in Commerce, California, which is about 3 miles from downtown Los Angeles. On that morning, she was filing some documents when one of her co-workers came through the door into a large work area that contained about 20 employees. The shuttle just blew up, he shouted. Most employees were taken aback. They had no idea what he was talking about. Once again, he blurted out, the space shuttle just blew up in Florida. Chris knew at that time something went very wrong. The space shuttle program began in the early 80s and continued to this day. The fleet consists of various shuttles that are designed to go into space, establish an orbit, and do a variety of tasks. It was heralded as a new era in space exploration. In the past, space exploration vehicles were used once and then discarded. The shuttle program revolutionized the way space travel was done. Chris couldn't believe her ears. Soon, almost all employees huddled around the lunchroom TV set, watching in horror the events taking place. It was a sad day for the United States, but it was also the beginning of a new era in space travel. The country rebounded from this disaster and restarted its program after a couple of years. There have been other accidents in the program, and most notably the Columbia, which disintegrated upon re-entry in February 2003, but the U.S. will not be deterred. Space travel is dangerous, but the spirit of the American people will not be contained. Marching for safer streets, there was a march through the Boyle Heights neighborhood of Los Angeles. The march was sponsored by a coalition of local organizations and agencies. The purpose of the march was to bring awareness to the violence in the community. Many people have been killed because of gun violence and other crimes. The march began at 9 a.m. on a busy corner. Many parents brought their children to the march. The crowd began to walk down the neighborhood sidewalks. Occasionally, the crowd would stop, and an organizer using a bullhorn would tell the story of a person who was killed. After the organizer told the story, there would be a prayer followed by a moment of silence. There were relatives of people who had been killed participating in the march. Some of these relatives would leave lit candles, balloons, or flowers in remembrance of the persons who died. One woman who died was found in the lake of Hollenbeck Park. Police suspect that her boyfriend killed her. She had a baby daughter. Her ex-husband participated in the march and asked that organizers include her in their prayers. The march continued for 20 blocks and ended at Wabash Park. While the march was somber, the mood inside the park was more celebratory. Different organizations had booths with information about local programs. There was a craft table for kids to draw a picture about the kind of neighborhood they wanted to live in. Different bands played between speakers offering solutions to the neighborhood's problems. On the same day, there was another march at a nearby housing project in the spring. 4 houses were firebombed. Police suspect the attacks were racially motivated. Organizers plan to hold the march again next year. They really hope, though, that conditions in the neighborhood would improve, so they wouldn't have to march. Amber Alert. David's cell phone started vibrating in the middle of the night. He woke up right away and nervously reached to his nightstand. He always set his cell phone to vibrate and charged it next to his bed when he went to sleep. David looked at the time on his cell phone. It was 2 in the morning. The only time someone contacted him at that hour was when there was an emergency. He read the message on his cell phone. It was an emergency. The text message said that a little boy had been kidnapped near where David lived. The boy had been taken into an orange Honda Civic. The text message also gave the license plate number of the car. There was also a picture of the little boy and a written description of what the boy was wearing when he was kidnapped. The boy's name was Adam. David didn't feel like at 2 o'clock in the morning. He went back to sleep. In the morning, however, he woke up thinking about the message and about the boy. David had never heard about an Amber Alert before. He decided to look it up on his computer. He learned that the Amber Alert system is an emergency broadcast system used to let people know when a child is abducted. It was named for a little girl named Amber Hagerman, who was kidnapped when riding her bike in Texas. Little Amber was found dead later. The news made David feel sad and angry, but he also felt like now he could do something to help. He decided to stay aware to see if he saw a boy or a car matching the description in the Amber Alert. Childhood friends Ken and Anthony were childhood friends. They went to elementary and high school together. They went to college in different states. And then they lost touch. That was 20 years ago. One morning, Ken was reading the newspaper with his morning coffee. Inside, he saw an announcement for a poetry reading at a nearby bookstore. He was surprised to find that the featured poet was none other than his friend Anthony. Ken decided to see what his old pal was up to. Ken sat in the last row of the area set up inside the bookstore. When Anthony was introduced and came up the podium, Ken hardly recognized him. Anthony was almost completely bald and had a little pot belly. When Anthony was in high school, he was very handsome. What Anthony had lost in looks was made up for in talent. Anthony's poetry was quite good. Anthony recognized Ken sitting in the back row. When the reading was over, Ken stood in line with the others waiting for Anthony to sign a copy of his book. When it was Ken's turn, Anthony stood up and hugged his long-lost friend. Anthony invited Ken to stay until he had finished signing books. Ken did, and the two men grabbed a cup of coffee at a nearby cafe. Even though so many years had passed since the two had seen each other, both men had a lot in common. Both graduated from college with degrees in comparative literature. Both went to graduate school. Anthony got his Master's of Fine Art in Writing. Ken went to law school. Both men married Mexican women. Both men divorced. Both men also had sons that were only a year apart. Ken and Anthony decided not to lose touch again. They planned to meet once a month for breakfast on Saturdays. Board game night, a great American tradition dating back to the birth of the country, is the board game night. This is where 2 or more families get together at someone's home to have dinner and refreshments, and then play games. This is an activity where almost anyone can play. Most board games can be played by children as young as 6 or 7 years old. It is fun for the kids to test their skills against their older brothers and sisters, or their parents. One of the oldest and most popular board games is Monopoly. It is a game where all players start in the same place and roll dice to advance from square to square. Little Johnny wanted to join the game one night and asked his parents if he could play. "Please, Mommy, please let me play with you tonight," he pleaded. His mom thought about it for a while and said, "Okay, Johnny, tonight you can play." She really didn't think he was going to be able to play the game, but to her surprise, he was very good at it. The object of the game is to bankrupt your opponents and have most money at the end of the game. You buy properties with money collected by moving around the board. The more money you have in your bank, the more property you can buy. Johnny landed on the boardwalk square, which is a very prized property. It is the most expensive property, but Johnny knew its value and bought it. The square is positioned at the end of the game where everyone collects $100, but if you land on it, you have to pay a high rent. Johnny bought a couple of nearby properties too, and before long, he was collecting rent from all the other players. Johnny ended up winning the game, which made him very happy. And it also made his mom very proud of him. Johnny showed her and everyone else what he was capable of. Celebrating a win, the Mexican national soccer team had just won a match against Croatia. In the World Cup, this meant that Mexico advanced to the next round. Mexican soccer fans worldwide are known for loyalty to their team. After this win, however, some wonder if they took their loyalty too far. In Huntington Park, California, fans took to the street after the win. The afternoon crowd grew to almost 200 people. The fans waved flags, yelled, honked their cars, and jumped around the streets. The crowd was so big that they blocked traffic. This caused traffic jams in the area. While most of these fans were just overzealous, a handful were intoxicated. Instead of just celebrating, they began throwing bottles. Some of the fans even began rocking cars parked on the streets. Police were called to the scene. Not only did the local police department send in patrol cars, police helicopters flew overhead, and some police on horseback began to try to disperse the crowd. Someone threw a bottle at a police horse. Police urged shop owners to close their businesses. The police arrested 5 people. Thankfully, no one was hurt. When Mexico played again the following week, police patrolled the streets in advance. This time they were going to be prepared if Mexico won. Again, Mexico was playing against the Netherlands. The Dutch team won 2-1. Mexican fans in Huntington Park still took to the streets despite the loss. This time the police were waiting in riot gear. The fans waved flags, chanted, honked horns, rocked cars, and even lit firecrackers, but no one threw bottles. The police didn't arrest anyone. They did have to close off 3 blocks to traffic, though. The police were probably secretly glad that Mexico didn't win. In 4 years, when the next World Cup happens, they'll worry about it again. This time the police were waiting in riot gear. The fans waved flags, chanted, honked horns, rocked cars, and even lit firecrackers, but no one threw bottles. The police didn't arrest anyone. They did have to close off 3 blocks to traffic, though. The police were probably secretly glad that Mexico didn't win in 4 years. When the next World Cup happens, they'll worry about it again. Half points. Will travel. Carla moved to San Francisco 2 years ago. All of her family was in Boston. Every year she tried to visit her family twice. She would go once in the summer and once during the Christmas holiday. Traveling cross-country was expensive, though. She needed to find a way to save money on her travel. She decided to try and use an airline loyalty program to see if that would help. There was one airline that Carla preferred to travel on. Every time she used that airline, there were hardly any delays and the trip was always comfortable. That airline featured in-seat DirecTV, so she could watch her favorite television shows while traveling. She could also order food and beverages right from her seat. An extra perk was that each seat had an electric outlet. This made it easy for Carla to plug in her computer and do work on her trip. On her last trip, Carla decided to sign up for that airline's loyalty program. She would earn points for every trip she made. Those points could be used towards air travel. The airline worker informed Carla that she could earn even more points if she signed up for the airline-sponsored credit card. The card had a low interest rate and no annual fee. For every $1 Carla spent, she would earn 1 point to use towards travel. Carla signed up for the credit card. She had good credit, so she was approved. Carla used that credit card to pay for a round-trip ticket to Boston. After only 1 trip, Carla had earned enough points for a free one-way ticket. That saved her almost $500. It felt like traveling for free. Carla decided to stay loyal to this airline. Long-distance relationship. Marie and Mark have been dating for 4 months. The relationship is moving fast. They already are talking about a future together, including moving in together. For Marie, this means moving her 2 children from a previous marriage as well, Marie's children. Call Mark Daddy. Marie and Mark see each other almost every day, and yet they have never actually met. Marie lives in the city of Ferris and Mark lives in Houston. They began conversing with each other in an online chat room. How they see each other is through video chat programs like Skype. They are constantly texting one another and sending one another pictures. Marie asks her friend Bella for advice. Bella met her husband Dan on Twitter 4 years ago and moved from New York City to Los Angeles to be with him. It was different from Marie and Mark's situation, though. Bella and Dan had friends in common, even though they lived on opposite coasts of the United States. Bella also traveled to Los Angeles a number of times to decide if she really liked Dan, and if she could live in another city. Dan and Bella traveled back and forth for over a year before deciding to move in with another and make a life together. Bella, like Marie, has 2 children from a previous marriage. Bella's kids do not call Dan Daddy, though. Bella warns Marie not to get into deep. She tells Marie that Mark needs to come and visit Los Angeles. Marie can also go to Houston. Bella feels that you really cannot be in a relationship with someone you only know through the computer. There have even been cases of people being tricked and not being who they say they are. Marie is infatuated, though. She and Mark have started talking about the kind of house they will buy together in Houston. Summer school, it was the first week of June. Gabby just finished her 3rd year of high school in El Sereno. However, when she received her report card in the mail, she learned that she failed a semester of algebra. This meant she had to go to summer school. Gabby was glad she had the chance to make up the class. She can't move on to the next level in math if she doesn't pass algebra. Summer school isn't easy, though. Gabby has to master the material in 6 weeks instead of the 20 she had during the regular school year. Summer school also meant that Gabby would be stuck in a hot classroom while most of her friends were at the beach or local amusement parks. Her friends passed algebra, so they had most of June, July, and August free from schoolwork. Going to summer school also meant that Gabby's family had to change their summer vacation plans. Gabby had to be in summer school from 9 a.m. to noon. She couldn't stay up late on weeknights or sleeping. She had to be on the bus at least an hour before class started, or else she would be late. The classrooms were hot since the school building was old and did not have air conditioning. When Gabby came home from school, she couldn't do whatever she wanted. After Gabby took the bus home from school, she had homework to do. This was the first time Gabby had to go to summer school. She wanted it to be the last time. Gabby made a promise to herself. In the fall, when regular classes begin again, she will try her hardest to pass. Sweating in a classroom while your friends are out having a good time is not fun. Summer break is not so much of a break when you have school. At Father's Day, Francesca picked up her 7-year-old son from school one afternoon. Isaac proudly showed his mother what he had made at school that day. It was a card made out of brightly colored construction paper. "It's for Father's Day," Isaac explained. The card was cut into the shape of a man-dress shirt with a drawing of a man-dress tie. Inside the card, Isaac had written the words "Happy Father's Day." Francesca wasn't familiar with Father's Day as it wasn't something celebrated in her home country. So she asked her neighbor Jenny about it. Jenny told her that Father's Day, like Mother's Day, is a made-up holiday in the United States. It is always celebrated on the 2nd Sunday in June. People give fathers cards, presents, go out to eat at a restaurant, or do something special that day. It's a day to show gratitude to your father, Jenny explained. Francesca understood, but she also felt a little bad. While the Father's Day card Isaac made was nice, Isaac's father never wore a dress shirt or a tie. Isaac's father, Tim, wore a uniform to work. On his days off, he liked to dress casually and comfortably. The most dressed up he got was by wearing a polo shirt. Francesca had an idea. She went shopping the day before Father's Day to get her husband a surprise on Father's Day morning. She and Isaac gave Tim a box wrapped up in nice paper. "Happy Father's Day," Francesca and Tim shouted. When Tim unwrapped the box, he laughed. Inside the box was a Father's Day card Isaac made in school. Also inside the box were a dress shirt and a tie. They were the same color as the card Isaac made. Tim, Francesca, and Isaac went next door to Jenny's house for a barbecue. Tim wore the dress shirt and tie. Black Friday, it was the morning after Julia's first Thanksgiving in the United States. The night before, she had a huge dinner with her friend Elizabeth's family. Before eating roast turkey, sweet potatoes, and cranberry sauce, each person at the table had to say something they were grateful for. Julia appreciated that she was able to participate in this holiday. That recalls the Pilgrim's first harvest after arriving from England a long time ago. Julia's phone rang at 4 in the morning. It was Elizabeth. Elizabeth invited Julia to go shopping with her. "We are going to the stores so early," Julia asked sleepily. Elizabeth explained that the day after Thanksgiving in the United States was called Black Friday. Stores, which held special sales, started very early. "It's the official start of the holiday shopping season," Elizabeth explained. Julia and Elizabeth were outside the local shopping center by 5 in the morning. Julia was surprised to see that not only were all the stores open, but they were crowded. Elizabeth told Julia that this was nothing. Some people camped outside the mall all night so that they could be among the first to enter and get extra special deals called doorbusters. Many times these doorbusters were electronic items at extremely reduced prices. Often only a small number of these items are made available. Sometimes they are only available to the first 100 people in line. Julia thought it sounded violent and wondered aloud if people really broke down doors to get into the store. "Sometimes there is a lot of pushing," Elizabeth explained. "Some people have even been hurt or killed because of physical fights over limited products." At 5 a.m., though, the doorbusters were gone and the cash registers had long lines. Many shoppers had full shopping carts of presents they intended to give away for Christmas, Hanukkah, or Kwanzaa. Election Day can receive many reminders in the mail. In the weeks leading up to the first Tuesday in November, Election Day, from before the time he became a United States citizen, he looked forward to being able to choose who would represent him in the various levels of government. Shortly after taking the citizenship oath, Ken filled out a short paper form, registering him to vote and choosing a political party affiliation. Ken appreciated that choosing a specific political party didn't limit whom he could vote for. Though he was free to vote for someone of the party he registered under, he could even vote for someone of a different party. Since his vote was secret, no one would know anyway, now that he was a naturalized citizen. Ken spent many hours looking over the various voter guides that appeared in his mailbox. On the national level, Ken could vote for president, members of the Congress. On the state level, Ken could vote for state congresspeople and governor of the state. Locally, Ken could cast a vote for mayor, city council persons, and local school board members. He felt a little overwhelmed by the choices, besides getting mail about the various candidates. He saw many commercials featuring each candidate's position on various issues. There were also televised debate, which helped show what the candidates have in common and how they differ. Ken was nervous on the day he went to vote. He went to his local polling place. A poll worker asked for Ken's name and address to verify he was registered. Ken confirmed his registration by signing next to his name. Then he was given a ballot and led to a booth where he had to make some tough choices. Prom night, Collie noticed that her son Jesus, a high school senior, was acting very strangely. He seemed to be hoarding his allowance and having many whispery conversations with his friends. When Collie asked Jesus about it, he admitted that he was nervous about prom, a dance held at the end of senior year of high school for those graduating. Jesus was feeling a lot of pressure to ask a girl to be his date for the prom. Girls, like Lexi, were also feeling pressure about a guy they liked asking to the prom. A photographer would be on hand to capture on film forever who said yes. Then there was the matter of the clothes. Young men like Jesus didn't have to worry so much. Most of them would just rent tuxedos. Young women, like Lexi, however, had to make sure that whatever dress they wore would be unique. There is nothing more embarrassing than going to the prom and having another girl wearing the same dress. For the parents like Collie, one of the biggest stressor was money. Tickets to the prom cost $120 per student, renting tuxedos cost a lot of money, not to mention the fact that traditionally he had to buy his date a corsage. Most students split the cost of a limousine among friends. Collie had more than money on her mind, though. She had heard stories about wild things happening on prom night. She worried about Jesus drinking alcohol, even though he was underage. Collie encouraged her son not to worry so much about finding a date. Maybe he could go to prom with a group of friends. That was what Jesus ended up doing. It was fine until it was time to be photographed. All of Jesus' friends split up into couples. Jesus posed alone. Need to learn how to drive. Meryl was a little embarrassed to admit it. She was 37 years old and didn't know how to drive. When she lived in Queens, it wasn't such a big deal. Everything that she needed was close by. The supermarket was 1 block away. She would take her shopping cart and get what she needed for the week easily. When she didn't feel like dragging the shopping cart, the supermarket even delivered for free. All she had to do was tip the driver. She would use that same shopping cart to take clothes to and from the laundromat, which was only a block away. While Meryl's job was not a block away, the subway station was. Every day she would walk the block to catch a 45-minute underground train ride to work. She repeated the journey in reverse to return home in the evenings. Alhambra Shore was different, though. The walk from Meryl's house to the supermarket was nearly a mile. She didn't feel like walking that long a distance while pushing a shopping cart full of a week's worth of food. The laundromat was a mile in the other direction. She wasn't going to push her dirty clothes through that many streets. There were no trains nearby to take her to work, just buses. The buses always took a long time to come. For the first few weeks, Meryl was always late everywhere. Sometimes when she had an urgent appointment, Meryl would ask friends to give her a ride somewhere. Almost all of her friends had cars and knew how to drive. Most of them learned it when they were in high school. After a while, her friends were tired of giving Meryl rides everywhere. You need to learn how to drive, Meryl, they told her. She knew they were right. But Meryl was scared. T-Ball, Emma's son Johnny, had been bugging her about joining a sports team like all his friends. One day she took Johnny to the local recreational center, where they were having tryouts for baseball. She found out about the tryouts from a banner she saw hanging outside the recreation center when she was driving by. Baseball seemed like the perfect sport for Johnny to learn to play, since it is nicknamed America's pastime. Emma took her son to the tryouts after school. "I'm sorry," one of the coaches told Emma. Johnny was too young to try out for baseball. Since he was 6 years old, he could try out for T-ball, though. T-ball is similar to baseball except that there is no pitcher. Instead, the ball is placed on a stand called a tee because of its shape. This makes it easier for younger kids to hit. T-ball games are also shorter than regular baseball games. Regular baseball games last 9 innings. Emma couldn't imagine her son standing still for 9 minutes. T-ball sounded like a good way to introduce her son to the responsibilities of being on a sports team and the rules of baseball. Emma had to bring Johnny back on a different day to try out for T-ball. When she did, he was put on a team. After paying a fee, Johnny was given a uniform. Johnny looked at the back of his uniform. "Hey, look, Mom, I'm number 1, he said proudly. Once Johnny started playing, though, it was clear to Emma that he was not very good at baseball. He stuck with it, though, and his team ended the season in 4th place. There were only 4 teams in the T-ball league. "Can I play again next season?" Johnny asked his mom. "Yes, but see if you can get another number," she told him. A breath of fresh air. Sam was so proud of himself. He had gone 2 years without smoking a cigarette. At the age of 14, Sam was already puffing away on his favorite brand of cigarettes, Marlboro. Even though people have to be over the age of 18 in America to buy cigarettes, Sam knew of a few stores that sold cigarettes without checking identification. Sam had spent 7 years smoking. He was 21 when he decided to quit. Sam decided to quit after discovering he had been coughing blood. He would get tired quickly, and he noticed his teeth were getting really yellow. Whenever Sam would hang out with his friends that smoked, he would always want a cigarette really badly, but was always strong and said no when they offered him one. Before Sam quit, he would go through a pack of cigarettes a week. The pack of cigarettes usually cost him $5.25. As a way to encourage himself to stop smoking, Sam decided to save his money every week. After 2 years, Sam took out all his money he had saved from not smoking and saw that he had saved $500. He decided to buy a bicycle so he could ride it for fun and for exercise. As he started riding his bike more frequently, he noticed that he didn't think about smoking anymore. He didn't want a cigarette when he would hang out with his friends that smoked. Sam would ride his bike in the morning because he loved getting a breath of fresh air. In the past, when he smoked, the only time he got a breath of fresh air was when he went out for a cigarette. He enjoyed being outside breathing in the air that would hit his face. As he rode his bike through the town, falling into a dream music had always played a big role in Jonathan's life. He liked different types of music, from hip-hop to rock and roll. One of his favorite bands was the Beatles. He could hear them every day. Jonathan didn't feel that way towards any other band. He had all of their albums and he knew all the lyrics to their songs. One day, Jonathan and his girlfriend Sarah went for a ride in Jonathan's car. Sarah was excited to show Jonathan a new band she had heard about. Sarah brought the CD and played it for Jonathan. As they drove around town, the first song was called 40-Day Dream, and the band's name was Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros. Jonathan didn't think much of them at first, maybe because he was driving. But after they stopped driving, he had the song stuck in his head. Jonathan decided to look for their albums. They had 3 out, so Jonathan decided to buy them all. During a rainy day, Jonathan invited Sarah to his house and they listened to all 3 of their albums. Jonathan loved the band. He loved how they sounded like bands from the past. He loved how they reminded him of the Beatles. When he and Sarah were listening to the 3rd album, the song If I Were Free came on. Jonathan jumped off his bed and started dancing alone. Sarah looked at him, smiled, and laughed. Jonathan started clapping, and then he started singing. The light became too heavy, and I fell into a dream, he sang. He fell next to Sarah, looked at her, and said, I feel like I'm in a dream when I listen to this band. Thank you for introducing me to them. Stop and frisk, the night was calm in Los Angeles, although the wind was particularly chilly. Frank had gotten out of work in downtown Los Angeles around 11 p.m. He got his sweater, put his headphones on to listen to music, and put his backpack on. Frank liked taking his backpack to work because he could take a change of clothes to work so that he didn't have to wear his uniform after he got out. In order to get to his house, Frank had to take a bus and a train. But he didn't mind because he could listen to music after getting off the train. Frank got something to eat at a little restaurant that stayed open late and served hamburgers. After eating, Frank still had to walk for 30 minutes. While Frank was walking through a small street with a lot of homes, he noticed there was a car behind him following him slowly. He looked back and noticed it was a police car. He didn't mind because he wasn't doing anything illegal, so he kept walking. As Frank was about to get home, the police car turned on the lights and drove directly to where Frank was at. They stopped and got out of the car. The 2 police officers surrounded Frank. Frank was used to this and put his hands in the air. The police officers told him to put his hands on the hood, which he did. As Frank was being searched, he asked the police officers why he was being searched. They ignored him and asked him questions. Do you have anything illegal on you? Have you been arrested before? Do you have a weapon? Frank answered no to all of their questions. They put Frank in the back of the police car. Frank asked again why he was being searched. One officer said, because you are walking around the neighborhood with a hooded sweatshirt. Frank had done nothing wrong, so the police let him go after searching his backpack. An earthquake. Jacqueline and her family were sleeping in their home. Their dog Scruffy was asleep next to Jacqueline. It was 4:36 a.m., and the night was quiet. There were no cars passing in the street. No noise could be heard. It was like everything was still. Jacqueline always put a cup with water next to her bed, so that if she got thirsty during the night, she didn't have to walk all the way to the kitchen. That was when it happened. The furniture started shaking, and the cup of water fell to the floor. Scruffy started barking, and it woke up Jacqueline. She looked around and saw that all her stuff was shaking. She started screaming. Soon after, her father came in and told her to come out quick. It was an earthquake. Jacqueline was so scared and couldn't move. Her father went in and picked her up. He took her outside, where Jacqueline's mother and brother were at already, Jacqueline and her. Brother were crying. They didn't understand what was happening. Luckily, Jacqueline's mother had prepared an emergency kit and had it outside. She looked for the key, which was hidden inside a fake rock, and unlocked the box. She pulled out blankets to keep her children warm. Jacqueline looked at her mother and took the blanket. She then saw her dad take a flashlight from the box. He used the flashlight to see if the house had any damage. The father knew the house was not safe, so they stayed up until someone could examine the house. The children didn't have school due to the earthquake, so they spent the day with their parents. Jacqueline was so proud of her parents. Because they knew what to do during this disaster, she talked to her friends. And they weren't so lucky. Jacqueline went up to her mother and father and hugged them, because she knew she felt the protection of her parents. A real guitar hero, Albert, had been playing the guitar almost all his life. His first guitar was given to him by his father. It was a Fender Stratocaster, and Albert absolutely loved it. As a young boy, Albert would spend hours and hours listening to songs trying to learn them on his guitar. As he grew older, he didn't play the guitar as much. He met a girl and they started dating. Eventually they had a son, every once in a while. Albert would take out the old Fender Stratocaster and play a song for his baby son named Max. He loved playing guitar for Max, because it would calm him down when he started crying. As Max got older, he started listening to the same kind of music his father listened to. Albert and his son would listen to music together and talk about what they thought the songs meant. During Max's 10th birthday, Albert gave his son a Fender Stratocaster as well, the same model his father had gotten him. It cost him a bit more, but he wanted his son to have the same one as his. Max was happy. He asked his dad to teach him all the songs he knew. Albert smiled and said, "Of course." When Max turned 17, he joined a band. They played local shows and were able to record some songs by themselves. One day, as Max was walking home from band practice, someone stopped him and took away his guitar. He was devastated. He went home and locked himself in his room. He couldn't face his dad. He knew he had let him down. When it was time for dinner, Max opened his bedroom door and saw his dad's Fender Stratocaster on the guitar stand. There was a letter and a set of keys on the guitar. The letter said, "To my guitar hero, Max. Here is my guitar. You need it more than I do, and the key to your new car. So nothing like this will happen to you again." An overturned school bus, a school bus transporting Maxwell High School students, overturned on the corner of Seeley Street and Wilton Avenue. The driver of the bus was trying to avoid hitting a car that passed a red light, and the bus overturned with 37 students inside. The driver suffered minor injuries to the face, and 2 students broke their arms. Roger Peterson, principal of Maxwell High School, said that the driver was not at fault. His reaction helped prevent any serious injuries. As soon as the bus overturned, the driver opened the door using the emergency handle and started evacuating the students one by one. He notified the police of the students that were injured. "We teach our drivers to ensure the safety of the students first," Peterson said. The driver, whose name is not being released at the moment due to an investigation, along with the 2 students, are being treated at Belmont Hospital. The parents were notified as soon as possible by school officials. According to John Panetta, who witnessed the accident, the school bus almost hit the car. The bus wasn't going that fast, but the other car was. If the bus had hit the car, those people inside would surely have been seriously injured or worse, Panetta said. Panetta also said that the driver of the school bus took precaution to turn where people weren't walking. If he were to have made a right, rather than a left, he would have definitely hit people that were crossing the street. Peterson issued a statement saying that the students who were inside the bus could miss school the next day to make sure they were okay and relax with their family. According to Peterson, the police provided him with a list of students that were involved in the accident. Police are looking for the driver of the car that passed the red light. It was a white Honda Civic. Calm and relaxed Anthony was a senior at high school and had a car. Even though Anthony wasn't 21, which is the legal age to buy alcohol, he would occasionally have a drink with his friends. Anthony was excited because today was his prom day. He had his tuxedo on and had a flower for his date. He got into his car and went to pick up his friend Jacob and then to pick up Jennifer, his date. When they showed up to the prom, Jacob's date and Jennifer went to the restroom. Jacob took out a small bottle of whiskey from his jacket pocket and told Anthony to take a drink. Anthony took some and didn't like it, but he still drank. As Anthony and Jennifer danced, he began to feel dizzy. He was drunk. "Anthony, are you okay?" Jennifer asked. Anthony looked at her and laughed. She figured out that he was drunk and decided to leave with Jacob's date. Anthony got mad and decided to leave. He got in his car and left. As he was driving down Maintell Avenue, he saw a police car following him. He got nervous and started chewing gum. Anthony was looking at the police car through his mirror so much that he almost took a red light. When the police saw this, he stopped Anthony. The police gave him a few tests to see if he had been drinking, and Anthony failed them. The police took him away. His father picked him up and they went to talk to a lawyer. The lawyer said that Anthony would have to take alcohol education classes, go to Alcoholics Anonymous, do community service, and pay a fine. Anthony's father said that Anthony would have to get a job as well to pay for the fine. Anthony decided never to drink after that. He said that it wasn't worth it. A day at the library, Claudette's dad didn't let her have a boyfriend. He told her that 12-year-olds aren't supposed to have boyfriends. Claudette always wanted a boyfriend, but didn't want to get her dad mad. She would always go to the library after school to study and wait for her dad to pick her up. One day, a boy named Stephen decided to go up to Claudette and say hi. "Hello, my name is Stephen. I've seen you here before," he said. "Oh, hello. My name is Claudette. I always come here to study and wait for my dad. I live a bit far," she said. Stephen asked Claudette if he could sit with her so he didn't have to study alone. Claudette said yes. They started studying and started talking. Soon they weren't studying at all. They began talking about music, books, movies, and what they liked to do for fun. Stephen had to leave before Claudette's dad came to pick her up, and he asked her if she would be back tomorrow so that they could study together again. Claudette said yes. The next day, Stephen showed up and saw Claudette. He sat down and she smiled at him and said hello. They began talking about their classes and what they were learning at school. After they talked for an hour, Claudette told him she had to go look for a book and if he could go with her. Stephen agreed and went to look for the book with Claudette. As they were looking for the book, Claudette was in one aisle and Stephen was in another. Claudette took out a book and saw Stephen was looking at her. She smiled and he told her she was beautiful. She was happy he said that, because she really liked him. Claudette asked him if he wanted to be her boyfriend. Stephen said yes, as they were hugging. Claudette's dad came in and saw them. He split them up and took Claudette by the hand. He told Stephen that he wouldn't be able to see her again. Stephen was sad. Playing catch, my big brother James has always been a good baseball player. He is 6 years older than me, but he always invites me to go play catch with him. It's one of my favorite things to do. We live next to a park. Whenever we get bored, we just cross the street and start throwing the ball around. The last time we went to the park, we were playing catch and also hitting some baseballs with our bats. Some guys came up to us because they wanted to play a game of baseball. They needed 2 more players, so they asked us to play with them. James asked me if I wanted to play, and I said yes. The guy's name was Christian, and he introduced us to all the guys. James introduced me and gave the guy our names. I asked Christian if I could play catcher. I always liked playing catcher at school. He said that I could, and James got first base. During the game, James got a home run and I was excited for him. I got on the base twice, but I got out all the time. I was sad, but James told me not to worry and that it happens. After the game, Christian and the guys told James if he wanted to go grab a drink with them. I thought James was going to go because he likes to drink, but he told them that he was going to take me out to eat. We thanked them for the game and Christian asked James for his phone number just in case they ever needed more players for a game. James gave it to him and then we went to go eat at Jim's Burgers. I asked James why he didn't go to drink with the guys. He told me that he knew his responsibilities. I didn't know what he meant, but I was glad he didn't go. Now we could eat burgers and fries. The humor and laugh George had always been a funny guy. I met him at the movie theater. I went to see the new Spider-Man movie and he was there dressed up like Spider-Man. He was acting like Spider-Man. And everyone was clapping for him and asking him for pictures. My girlfriend wanted to go take her picture with him and I said okay. When I went up to him, I asked him if it was okay to take a picture of him and my girlfriend. He said yes. I took the picture and started talking to him. He told me that his friends hadn't showed up yet and that he didn't want to sit alone. My girlfriend and I decided to sit with him. After we saw the movie, I asked him if he wanted to go grab a bite to eat. He accepted my invitation. He had me and my girlfriend laughing the whole drive to the restaurant. We talked a lot on the phone. We were big fan of Nintendo games. I invited him over to my house so we could play. George never had a bad thing to say about anyone. He told me once that there is good in everyone. Some are just afraid to show it. George had invited me to his house one day to play old Nintendo games. But when I showed up to his house, no one was there. I looked around and called him on his cell phone, but no one answered. I decided to leave and come back in an hour. When I got back to George's house, I saw that someone was inside. I knocked on the door and an older woman came out. It was George's aunt. I asked her if George was home. She looked at me with sad eyes and said that George was in the hospital. I finally understood why George was the way he was. George had cancer, and the doctors told him that he could go at any time. That's why George was always looking for the humor in life, because his real life was filled with sadness. How Johnny met his wife Johnny has always loved taking long walks. He lived close to Griffith Park in Los Angeles. The park is very beautiful. It has trees and winding roads leading up to the hills where he could get lost for hours. Whenever he hiked up there, he always felt at peace with the world and with himself. It was his personal safe zone. One day Johnny was hiking up a trail that he had not tried before, and soon he was lost. Griffith Park is very large and people have been lost up there in the past, but he knew he would find a way back. After about an hour of walking around in circles, Johnny heard something move in the bushes. It scared him for a second, but he just kept walking. It was starting to get dark, and he began thinking that he might have to spend the night in a cave, or under a rock or something. That was when he heard more noise coming from the trail. It was very loud. Hey! Johnny shouted. What's out there? Stay away. He was sure it was a coyote or maybe a mountain lion. He started looking for something to fight back with in case of an attack. Johnny was in a full panic and started shaking uncontrollably as the noise got closer and closer. Just as he thought that an animal was going to jump out of the bushes, he saw the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in his life. She was tall and blonde and had long, straight hair, and the first thing she said was, "Are you okay?" Johnny was in a full panic and started shaking uncontrollably as the noise got closer and closer. Just as he thought that an animal was going to jump out of the bushes, he saw the most beautiful girl he had ever seen in his life. She was tall and blonde and had long, straight hair, and the first thing she said was, "Are you okay?" It turned out her name was Sheila, and she was a park ranger. She told Johnny that she had seen him walk up the trail earlier, but did not see him come back down. So she decided to come up to see if everything was okay. Johnny had never been so embarrassed in his life, but that was okay. The couple ended up getting married a little more than a year after that. She saved Johnny's life that day in more ways than one. My bike club, I had the most wonderful childhood. I grew up in San Diego, where it rains about 2 days a year and it's always sunny and bright. I could ride my bike just about any day of the year and had lots of friends. My best friend was George Kenny. George lived just a few houses down the block from me and we were the same age. Actually, I was about 28 days older than him, a fact that I always threw in his face. "You must respect your elders," I would sometimes tell him. That usually got a nasty response from him. Anyway, George came up to me one day and said, "Hey Richard, why don't we form a bicycle club?" I thought about it for a while and then he said, "We could give ourselves a cool name and get hats and stickers and have lots of fun." What do you say? I immediately fell in love with the idea. You bet, Georgie Porgy. I used to call him that all the time even though I knew he hated it. Well, before we knew it, we got a couple of other guys together and came up with the best name for a club ever. We were the White Skulls. Why we chose that name, I'll never know, but all the kids seemed to like it, so I was okay with it, too. The four of us went to the local bike shop and we each picked out a skull decal to put on our bikes. I chose a green one, while Georgie Porgy picked red. He shouted, "I am the Red Skull. I am the king of the club. If you don't like it, try to take it from me." George was a pretty big guy, so no one argued with him. We rode our bikes everywhere and had a great summer. That's how we formed the greatest bike club ever. Helen the gardener Helen was outside watering her lawn like she does every other day. She loves her lawn and her garden. She has the prettiest house on the block, but it's only because she works at it very hard. Helen is in her mid-40s, but you wouldn't know it by looking at her. Her face is nearly wrinkle-free, and it seems she has more energy than people half her age. "Good morning, Helen," I said as I walked outside on my way to work. "Hi, Robert. How are you?" she asked. "Fine." "I'm doing fine. Your yard is looking good," I said, and it was. Sometimes it really bothers me that I can't get my lawn to look as nice as hers. What's your secret, Helen?" I asked. "Secret to what?" she answered. "To having such a beautiful lawn. I water mine. I seed mine every year and I still can't get it to look as good as yours." "I'm jealous," I said with a smile. Helen just nodded and had this funny little look on her face that suggested she was just better at keeping her lawn nice than I was. I didn't like that look, but I guess it's okay that she feels that way. I've known Helen since she was a little girl and things have not gone well with her lately. She's been alone for a long time. She wasn't very pretty when she was young. She had terrible acne that covered her face from ear to ear. It made her very self-conscious, so she didn't go out on dates very much, but that all changed when she met Josh. They were together for more than 10 years until, sadly, they went their separate ways since then. Helen has nurtured and tended her garden as if it were her child when I got home later that day. She was outside working on her roses. I said hello to her as I walked to my door, and she smiled brightly. She looked beautiful. My friend Diego Alex was shopping at the local market yesterday trying to find some fresh vegetables for his dinner that night. The market is in the neighborhood and it is not one of the giant, national, big-name stores. It is a small store with only a few locations around Los Angeles. Alex likes these types of markets so much better than the superstores because there are real people running them. Alex knows the guy that runs the fruits and vegetables section at the market. His name is Diego, who was born in Tijuana, Mexico, about 120 miles from Los Angeles. Diego always lets Alex know what is a good buy at the market. "Hola, Diego," Alex said in Spanish. "Hey, Alex, how are you?" he answered in English. This happens every time Alex talks to Diego. Alex speaks to him in Spanish and Diego answers in English. Spanish is spoken a lot around LA. The city has the largest population of Mexicans anywhere in the world except Mexico City. Alex likes to show Diego how much Spanish he knows, and Diego also wanted Alex to know how much English he knows. It's so funny to hear a conversation like this. They sometimes get strange looks from people. Today, Diego got some beautiful oranges. They were big and plump and were at the right price, too. "These are great, Alex. You will like them very much," said Diego. Alex responded with muy bueno. Diego, which means very good. Diego, he also told Alex about some tasty cucumbers they had today. And Alex ended up buying a few of those too. When Alex left, he said, "Buenas tardes, Diego," which is a Mexican farewell phrase, and Diego said, "See you soon, my friend." Going back to school, Dennis had always been a terrible student when he was a kid. His parents sent him to a Catholic school. He didn't know much about the school. Of course, he didn't know much about anything when he was 6 years old. But he did know one thing: all his friends from the neighborhood went to a public school. Dennis was the only boy that went to a private school, and his friends would often tease him about it. "You're not one of us. You're not one of us," they would sometimes chant. He wasn't really alone, though. His friend Patricia also went to the Catholic school, but she was a girl. After a while, they began walking to the small school together every morning. Pat was the first girlfriend Dennis had ever had. She wasn't his girlfriend. She was just a friend who happened to be a girl. The nuns at the school were very mean. They ruled the school. Like it was a prison, Dennis was afraid to even raise his hand to ask a question. His mother was often called into meetings with the principal about Dennis, who would also sit in the office listening to the principal telling his mother how smart he was, but was very lazy. Needless to say, Dennis didn't do well in school and ended up going to a junior college after high school. He didn't do very well there either and soon dropped out. That all changed after Dennis grew up and started working. He had worked for many years before deciding he wanted to earn a degree after all. Dennis went back to school at the age of 30 and soon was a college graduate with a degree. It turned out Dennis wasn't as lazy as those nuns thought he was. Mario's first car when Mario was 19 years old, he bought his first car. It was a brand new 1985 Toyota Corolla. He was on top of the world. It was beautiful and was really fast and fun to drive. Living in Southern California without a car is not a good idea. The region is so spread out that it could take hours getting from one part of town to another if you use public transportation. You are not anyone in Los Angeles if you don't have a car, or at least that is what some people say. Before that, Mario had never owned or bought a car in his life. His father warned him about the salespeople. "Don't ever pay the asking price, son," he said. Mario looked at him with disbelief. "What do you take me for, Dad? I am not an idiot. I know not to pay the first offer," he screamed back. His dad offered to go with him to the car dealer, but Mario wanted to go alone. It was his money and his car, and he was determined to do this alone. When Mario got to the car dealer, a nice man came up to him and asked if he wanted to take the car he was looking at for a test drive. Mario said, yes, of course. So they went for a drive. Mario fell in love with the car, and the salesman knew immediately that he was going to make some money. It turns out that you should never let a salesman know you're interested in anything you want to purchase. Mario didn't know how to negotiate and wound up paying too much for the car. He really didn't care, though. He owned his first car. When he told his dad what he paid for it, he thought his dad was going to be mad, but he just said, "That's okay, son. That same dealer ripped me off when I bought my first car, too." Joining the Marine Corps, Phil grew up in a very poor family in a very poor town. It was pretty bad. Sometimes Phil and his sisters didn't have enough to eat and went to bed hungry. That was okay with Phil, though, because that was his life, and he thought it was just the way everybody in the world lived. Phil had a lot of fun and had many friends. It wasn't until Phil was about 12 years old that he began to realize that there were better things out there in the world. Phil and his best friend Albert would sit around and talk about getting out of this place to see the world. It was a fantasy, but it was a good fantasy. They really didn't know how they would do it, but they had a dream. Then one day Phil's cousin Ralphie came to visit. Phil didn't know Ralphie very well. Ralphie grew up in Texas and was about 8 years older than Phil. It had been years since Phil saw his cousin. That day, Ralphie changed Phil's life. Ralphie walked into the house wearing his Marine Corps uniform. And Phil knew at that moment that he wanted to become a Marine. Phil and Ralphie talked all night long. Ralphie told him all about the Corps, and Phil was fascinated. Ralphie was wearing his medals and awards, and his uniform was so neat and clean that Phil wanted to join at that moment. 5 years later, Phil enlisted in the Marines. He was 17 and needed his mom's permission. His mom said, "Where do I sign?" Of course, she was joking, but she knew Phil was going to do this. It was his way out of this place, so she gave him her blessings. The day Phil left, he promised his mom he would be back. He kept his promise. He came back several times over the years and helped his family as much as he could. A workaholic dad, David must have been the only kid in America that did not like summer vacation. Every year, between the beginning of June through the end of August, school kids were on vacation. Only to David, summer vacation meant work, and more work. His dad was a workaholic. He had 2 jobs most of the time. He had one job during the day and the other at night, but sometimes he worked on weekends, too. The man had more energy than any person's alive. When he wasn't working on weekends at his 3rd job, he worked at home, and that was why David hated summer vacation. His dad was always building something or tearing something down. If he wasn't tearing down a wall or adding a new room to the house, he was putting in a new driveway or garage. It was living hell for a 13-year-old kid. While all of David's friends were off playing baseball or riding their bicycles, he was usually hauling bricks or mixing cement. That's what he remembers about his childhood. David always knew he was in trouble whenever he heard "Where's David?" His dad's voice seemed to carry down the street. That phrase could only mean it was time to get to work. Of course, David learned throughout the years how to make himself disappear at just the right times, but his dad usually found him anyway. "But Dad, I want to go to the park to play with my friends," David would say. "You can waste time with your buddies some other time. It's time to get to work now," his dad would respond. It got so bad that David would intentionally fail classes so he would have to go to summer school. Summer school was for students who didn't do well during the regular school year, but he didn't care. It meant less work. It meant freedom. The carnival every June. My old elementary school has a carnival on its ground. This has been happening since I was a little boy. I used to have so much fun there. It was amazing. It had rides like the Ferris wheel and the flying teacups. The Ferris wheel was this huge wheel that carried 2 people in a giant circle above the rest of the carnival. I remember the first time I got on it when I was 7 years old. I had been begging my mom for months to let me ride it. "Please, Mom, please. I'm big enough now," I would scream. However, she kept saying, "You're too young, Billy. Maybe one day." Of course, 7-year-old kids have short memories. I kept asking over and over again until she finally said okay, but she said she was going with me. "I'm a big boy, Mom. I can go alone," I said. She would not agree. "We're going together or not at all," she said. And of course, I said okay. When the big day came, I was so excited. I almost had an accident while waiting in line. The guy who was seating people kept saying next as more and more people got on and the line kept shrinking. His shouts of next kept getting louder and louder, and I knew my time was coming up. When we finally reached the end of the line, it felt like I waited a month. We got on and put on our seat belts. I was excited and afraid at the same time. Then it started. I went so high up in the air that I got dizzy. My stomach began to turn and I felt like throwing up. It was just too fast and too high for me. I didn't get sick, but I was sure glad I was on the ground again when I told my mom. "Please don't send me up there again, Mom." High school love going to an all-boy high school was no fun. Joe's parents thought it would be a good idea to send him there instead of a public school because he would get distracted by girls, as his mom would say. Once, during his 3rd year, Joe begged his mom to let him go to public school. "I just want to be normal," he would tell her. "I want to meet girls. I don't want to be weird." But his words always fell on deaf ears. Mom always said that Joe had plenty of time to go on dates after high school and that he needed to concentrate on his schoolwork. This usually made him very sad, but like a good kid, Joe just nodded his head and went on with his studies. That all changed one day when Joe met Carmen, who lived just 2 blocks away from him. One day he ran into her at the market by chance. They had gone to kindergarten together. They were also of the same age. She was in Joe's class and she remembered Joe, too. After about 2 weeks, they were going steady. Joe was so happy, but had to hide his relationship from his parents, which was okay because Carmen was hiding him from her family, too. "Are you kidding me?" Carmen said. "They would kill me if they knew I had a boyfriend." Everything was going great for a time, but Joe's mom was right. His grades started slipping, and he soon was on academic probation because he was spending too much of his free time with Carmen. She also dropped a grade or two. As a result, both of them had to go to summer school to improve their grades, but Joe didn't care. He was in love, and that was all that mattered at the time. Much later, he came to realize his mom was right.